Hello and welcome to Alaska's Political Pipeline. My name is political reporter Will Courtney, and join alongside me today I have Senator Lisa Murkowski calling in from her office in D.C. Senator, we're coming off the tails of some big movement to end this government shutdown, 41 days. Why don't you kind of describe the moment for me?
Well, 41 days is a long time to be slogging through a government shutdown, and I tell you, this cannot come too soon. What we are seeing, the impact from this shutdown, from SNAP benefits not being available to people, now 2 missed paychecks for some, almost 3 missed paychecks. What we're seeing with air traffic controllers and the impact on Alaskans and travelers everywhere. This shutdown has been real, it has been hard, and it needs to end, and that's what's happening in the United States Senate as we speak. We've got about a handful of votes, about a half dozen votes to process yet this evening. We will pass it out of the Senate. It will now move over to the House, and hopefully they will move rapidly, and the president will sign this into law. We will get the government open. We will get people paid. Yeah. We will put back in place those who have been subject to writs. We will get this behind us, which is so necessary.
Yeah, and I was watching the vote happening last night. I saw you on the Senate floor, but I even heard Senator Susan Collins mention you by name personally. Tell me a little bit about that. She thanked you personally for your work towards ending the government shutdown. Well, I'm just curious, what were you doing behind the scenes?
Well, I guess what wasn't I doing behind the scenes? As an appropriator, I have a very keen interest in making sure that the appropriations bills that we have worked through the committee actually become law. People would not be without SNAP benefits if we had been able to pass the agriculture appropriations bill in a timely manner. That's part of this package. Tomorrow is Veterans Day. It's only appropriate that our veterans have the care and the programs and the services that they have earned. Passing the Milcon VA bill will allow for that. So I have been engaged in making sure that we have an opportunity to move these appropriations bills. I've also been very engaged in the issue of how we avoid this cliff that people are looking at when it comes to the affordability of their insurance. We've seen rates announced as we have seen the rate hikes, the concerns that people have that they're going to see the ACA premium tax subsidy disappear. And so I have been involved and engaged in those conversations as well. So I've got a lot of relationships on both sides of the aisle. You work to have conversations, you build a little trust. There's a trust deficit around here, so those of us that do have the opportunity to just talk openly and squarely with one another to try to get an outcome. Get an outcome for the good of the country, not necessarily for Republicans, not necessarily for Democrats, because neither side is winning. Everybody is losing when the government is shut down, and we need to make that happen. So it was all hands on deck, and I was proud to be part of that.
Yeah, and then in that big scramble, you mentioned insurance. That's a big part of why this shutdown's been so prolonged. You know, Senate Democrats really pointing at this is the main thing they're fighting for. That's not what we're seeing, at least in the legislation of this bill. However, there is a promise that it will be addressed. I understand you had a statement on it earlier today. Tell me a little bit about that promise, and is that something that you think is really going to be handled correctly? I heard, Senate Democrats saying that maybe that's not something to be trusted. I mean, you tell me how you responded to those critiques.
Well, and as I mentioned, there's a deficit of trust in the Senate right now. That's why, quite honestly, we need to get back to our families. We need to get back to our states, and we need to basically get away from one another for a moment, because things have been very, very, very tense here lately. So here's the question. We want to actually try to reduce the cost of health care, which will in turn reduce the cost of insurance. I think the answer to that is yes. Now, there may be some who just want to ride on the They want to use it for campaigning or for politics. And so they're not really looking for an outcome. I want to get an outcome. And I know a lot of Democrats who also want to get an outcome, along with so many of us on this side of the aisle. And so how we can come together as Republicans and Democrats, again, not to get a Republican bill or a Democrat bill, but a bill that can actually make a difference for people in this country when it comes to what they see as these looming costs. There's some good ideas that are out there. We've been talking about them. And so I think what it really comes down to is a commitment to work with one another. Leader Thune has made the pledge that he will allow for an opportunity for a vote prior, he said by the second week in December. I believe he will honor that. I, along with others, will expect and demand that he honor that. But what we need to do in the meantime is develop what can be acceptable for 60 members of the United States Senate. Not an easy task, but not impossible, and that should be our commitment to the American people.
Sure. And you mentioned deficit of trust. So I think that's something that I'm looking at when it comes to what's next for this government shutdown. Obviously, there was a big standstill, and there still kind of is to some degree. 40 Democrats and 1 Senate Republican are still not voting for this CR. How do you move forward as, I guess either a party, but also, able to work with the other side following this shutdown after it was extended for 41 days?
It's not easy. It's not easy, but it takes a commitment to a purpose. And again, to a purpose and not to a party. So we know, Republicans and Democrats, what people in our states are feeling. They're worried about the cost of their groceries. They're worried about the cost of their mortgage or their rent, and they're worried about the cost of their health care. And they're seeing that in front of them as they're making a decision for them and their family as to the plans that they're going to select for next year. And so this is a shared issue of concern. And so I think if you approach it from the perspective of we have a problem that we need to solve for people throughout the country, do you want to work together in good faith, or do you just want to send a message? Because there are some, and I'll be a little bit cynical here, but there are some who are looking at this and saying, you know what, the Republicans didn't want to give us what we were asking for, which is an extension of the ACA as it is. And so if that doesn't come, they're going to have to bear the entire responsibility, and every disgruntled American should know you beat up the Republicans. Well, you can take that approach and say, well, we're not going to fix it. We're just going to let the Republicans shoulder that. But you haven't helped the people who are impacted then. So again, let's not let this period be consumed. What is the political message? Let's actually try to come together to get a positive outcome that will work to reduce the costs for people in this country who are so worried about whether or not they can even afford insurance, or whether their policy, if you will, is just to go to the emergency room when they have a health issue. That's not the answer here either.
Sure. And just a few more questions. Looking at those solutions for insurance, I've been looking at what the price increases when those enhanced premium tax credits are going to be expired in December, and what that looks like in Alaska. And for some people, this is according to data from the Kaiser Family Foundation. For some people, that could be a slight double. For some families, it could be a triple. Right? What are you going to be doing to make sure that healthcare remains affordable if these enhanced premium tax credits don't get renewed? What are the solutions being entertained right now?
Well, there's a whole handful of things that are out there on the table. Some months ago, I put forth a proposal that said a 2-year extension of the ACA tax credits with the first year, recognizing that it's tough to put reforms in year one, but in year two, we must look at some of these reforms because there are abuses within the program. And so how can we address it? Is it a cap, an income cap? I think that is absolutely one of the solutions, and something that has been discussed on a bipartisan basis. Is there a minimum, a small dollar amount minimum premium that should be considered as part of it? Much of the discussion that is going on in the past, literally like 24, 48 hours, has been, can you take the amount of the premium subsidy and deliver it not to the insurance company, but deliver it directly to the individual by way of a benefit card, effectively, and empower the individual to be making that healthcare decision, recognizing that they need a little help. The subsidy has helped them afford that insurance, and so these flexible health savings plans is something that Senator Cassidy, who's the chairman of the Health Committee, has been advancing. And there's been great discussions from Republicans and Democrats about, okay, why are we doing something that is going to make sure that the first entity that benefits is the insurance company? Don't we really want to make sure that the first people that benefit is the consumer themselves? And so kind of looking at things through a different lens is something that Senator Cassidy has challenged us to do. So there are ideas that are all over with regards to how you can extend, what the reforms are. Do we look at a different structure for processing? So there is much in the mix right now. I think that that's good. I think that that's a positive signal as we leave the Capitol this week. And again, the House has to take this up before we get the government actually open. But I think what you're seeing in terms of the very earnest, constructive conversations about how we address the cost of healthcare.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody in Alaska that says, "Oh, I'm good with the doubling of my healthcare insurance costs." There's nobody, much less anyone who says that a tripling is doable. This is not the right direction, and we know it.
And then one last question for you. You kind of painted the picture of how we got to this moment. Tell us what's next. You mentioned just before we hopped on this conversation, you still have 7 votes ahead of you today. What happens after that, and how long do you think it's going to be until the government reopens?
It's a great question because people want to know, when am I going to get paid? When will my SNAP benefits be there? Is essential air service going to be impacted and I won't be able to fly? When are our air traffic controllers going to be back at work because they're now being paid and they're not subject to the fatigue? Everybody wants to know, right? Well, tonight with the Senate approving this agreement, it will go to the House. Speaker Johnson has called House members back. So right now it looks like it could be as early as tomorrow that the House is able to take this up. It may be Wednesday. Probably Wednesday is more realistic. My hope is that once the House is able to pass this measure, that the president will promptly and immediately sign it so that it becomes law. And again, keep in mind, it not only reopens the government, but it then puts in law 3 appropriations bills. The military construction and veterans affairs. It puts in place the agriculture bill, which covers SNAP and WIC, and it covers the legislative branch, which covers operations, obviously, here within the legislature. But it basically locks in place the budget, the funding, the spending plan for these 3 appropriations accounts for the balance of this fiscal year. So It's significant, and I think the whole country will breathe a collective sigh of relief when the government is opened and these measures are passed into law.
And that's Senator Lisa Murkowski. Thank you so much for your time today, ma'am. I really appreciate it.
You can hear the bell in the background calling us to the next one. So perfect timing.
Good deal. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Alaska's Political Pipeline. If you like what you listen to, consider rating our podcast and giving us a follow. We'll be back in your feeds next Monday, but until then, please take care.